Breaking news from around your world on this Wednesday, December 19th, 2018. I'm Larry Rice. The Trump administration says U.S. troops are being withdrawn from Syria after President Donald Trump said the Islamic State group had been defeated. The Pentagon said it was transitioning to the next phase of the campaign, but would not provide further details of what that next phase is for force protection and operational security reasons. Some 2,000 troops have helped rid much of northeastern Syria of IS, but pockets of fighters remain. The Pentagon said the U.S. will keep about 5,000 troops in neighboring Iraq and the ability to launch attacks into Syria if needed. The Syrian government has long called for U.S. forces to leave the country. News of a U.S. pullout comes a day after Russia, Iran, and Turkey agreed that a panel to draw up a new Syrian constitution will meet next month. Diplomats from the three countries agreed at the end of a meeting in Switzerland Tuesday the 150-body committee will convene for the first time in January. The Federal Reserve is raising its key interest rate for the fourth time this year to reflect the U.S. economy's continued strength, but signaling that it expects to slow hikes next year. The quarter-point hike to a range of 2.25% to 2.5% lifts the Fed's benchmark rate to its highest point since 2008. The increase will mean higher borrowing costs for many consumers and businesses. The Fed's policy statement says some further gradual rate increases are likely, but its updated forecast projects just 2 rate hikes next year, down from 3 that the Fed had predicted in September. In another sign of fewer rate hikes ahead, the new forecast reduces the long-run level for the Fed's benchmark rate to 2.8%, down from 3%. Wednesday's increase was the Fed's 9th since it began gradually tightening credit 3 years ago. The European Commission says it started to implement its preparations for a no-deal Brexit in case the UK crashes out of the EU without a plan. It's announced temporary measures to try to reduce the impact, but says it cannot counter all the problems it expects. As Prime Minister Theresa May's proposed exit plan flounders in Parliament, both sides are preparing for the worst-case situation. The UK has allocated $2.5 billion in funding to government departments. The European Commission's measures are designed to limit disruption in certain key areas, such as finance and transport, if Brexit goes ahead in March without a deal. In a statement, it said, these measures will not and cannot mitigate the overall impact of a no-deal scenario. The Commission's 14 measures cover legislation that will aim to ensure some continuity in issues such as transport and customs, data protection, animal health and plants, climate policy, and key financial products. Brussels says the arrangements will be strictly time-limited and will be ended without any consultation with the UK. A 35-year-old former Blackwater security guard was found guilty of first-degree murder Wednesday for shooting a civilian at a crowded traffic circle in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad in 2007 in an incident that drew worldwide condemnation. The Washington Post reports Nicholas Slatton's conviction on the charge came a year after a federal appeals court vacated his initial 2014 conviction in the case, saying he should have been tried separately from 3 other Blackwater guards involved in the incident at Baghdad's Nisr Square on September 16, 2007. Prosecutors allege that Slatton of Sparta, Tennessee, fired the first shots and intentionally set off a shooting rampage that killed or wounded 31 civilians. Slatton and his fellow guards were traveling in a heavily armored 4-truck Blackwater worldwide convoy and had been trying to clear a path for U.S. diplomats after a nearby car bomb. At Nisr Square, they opened fire on Iraqis, including women and children, with machine guns and grenade launchers. In addition to the 14 dead, another 17 Iraqis were wounded. The latest outbreak of the Ebola virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo has killed more than 300 people. The country's health ministry said in northern province of North Kivu, 552 Ebola cases have been reported, with 494 confirmed. Of the 319 who have died from the virus, 271 are confirmed. Cases have been reported in neighboring Ituri province, which borders Uganda and South Sudan as well. In a progress statement issued December 13th, the World Health Organization said that non-engagement from communities and conflict continue to hamper response activities that efforts to contain the outbreak. A controlled trial to evaluate the effectiveness of Ebola treatment drugs began in the DRC health zones in November. The virus causes fever, headache, and hemorrhaging and typically kills about half those infected. The current outbreak is the DRC's second in 2018 and the 10th since 1976. The Senate overwhelmingly approved the biggest overhaul of the federal criminal justice system in decades. The bill, the First Step Act, was passed 87-12, with backing from both conservatives and liberals. It seeks to change tough-on-crime prison and sentencing laws that have increased prison populations and created what critics on both sides of the aisle have called an unfair criminal justice system. The bill creates more rehabilitation programs, eases mandatory minimum sentencing, reduces the three-strike penalty from life in prison to 25 years, and lets some federal inmates earn time credit by taking part in special programs. The legislation now moves to the House, where it also is said to have bipartisan support. President Trump tweeted Tuesday that he looks forward to signing this into law. The Senate prepared to vote Wednesday to avert a federal government shutdown and keep the government funded into February after President Trump backed off his demand for money for a border wall with Mexico. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the short-term spending measure would provide money to keep the government running through February 8th. With the Senate on track to approve the measure, it would next go to the House, where lawmakers were returning to session late Wednesday evening. Votes were uncertain there, but approval was expected before Friday's deadline, when federal funding for a portion of the government expires. Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi signaled support. The swift pace in Congress came after Trump moved off his demand. Trump has not said that he would sign such a temporary measure, but White House counselor Kellyanne Conway on Wednesday said he'll take a look at that, certainly. On Twitter, Trump appeared to respond to criticism that he was retreating. He insisted that one way or the other, we will win on the wall. Should the legislation become law, the border money fight would drag into the next Congress, which could prove even more difficult for Trump with a Democratic-led House. The U.S. and Mexico on Tuesday announced a plan to work together to discourage migration from Central America. The U.S. pledged a contribution of $10.6 billion, mostly through existing aid programs, including loans and other private sector support under the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. The agreement marked a symbolic early effort at collaboration by the Trump administration and the government of new Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador after 2 years of somewhat combative relations between the North American neighbors. Mexico said it would contribute $25 billion to development in southern Mexico over 5 years, which López Obrador said could provide employment opportunities for Central Americans. The Trump administration on Tuesday announced a ban on bump stocks, attachments that let semi-automatic rifles fire like fully automatic machine guns. Calls for banning the devices began after they were used last year in the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history, which left 58 people dead and hundreds injured in Las Vegas. Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker signed the regulation, which will take effect 90 days after it's published in the Federal Register, which could happen Friday. Once that happens, bump stock owners will have to destroy the accessories or hand them over to federal authorities. Uber is launching a program that encourages drivers to report any suspicious activity of riders to the police. The program, which is coordinated with Crime Stoppers USA, will launch in 5 U.S. cities: Jacksonville, Florida, Atlanta, Indianapolis, New Orleans, and Las Vegas. It will utilize an app that allows drivers to send anonymous tips to law enforcement via Crime Stoppers, which already has networks set up in those 5 cities. Crime Stoppers sometimes gives cash rewards to tipsters, and Uber drivers will also be eligible for the compensation. Drivers who are not classified as employees of Uber but are considered independent contractors will not receive any special training about what activity they should report. In a statement announcing the program, Uber said the new program is part of the company's growing effort to cooperate with law enforcement agencies around the world. In addition to the 5 U.S. cities, the Uber and Crime Stoppers program also launched in 2 Canadian cities, Toronto and Ottawa, and there are plans to launch in Latin America as well. And that's your update for this Wednesday, December 19th, 2018. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.